Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. And yes, we're getting right back to our Down the Rabbit Hole series, continuing on where we are discussing Dr. Andrew Wakefield. But, real quick, brief disclaimer. Throughout the entirety of this Down the Rabbit Hole series, kind of chronicling the re-emergence of the anti-vax movement that really got heightened late 90s, early 2000s. And we're going to be going through, well, all of that and every single bit of information that we cover in regards to this particular series, you're going to find right there in the description box, folks. So you can link to it, click on it, go right there yourself. So before you get in the comments and ask me, source is in the description box, all right? Source is in the description box, always, every time. Trigger warnings. This channel is marked not for kids for a reason. I do use profanity, and some of the subjects we do cover on the channel are especially triggering. So if you have anyone that is 16 or younger and they're watching this channel, parental supervision is very much advised. Also, trigger warning. I don't mind if you're anti-vax and you watch this channel. I don't even mind if you disagree with me. I don't even mind a debate. I will not accept name calling. I will not accept false information, and I will not leave it up on my channel for even 5 minutes the moment I catch that somebody has done it. I am autistic. One thing I like is facts. But I will always fact check you. Every time. So if you descend into name calling, or you put up false information, I will delete your comment and block you from the channel. This is your only warning. And if you want to try and tell me that something happened that is a fact, again, I'm autistic. I love details. I love facts. I will research it. I will research it the minute that I see the comment because it's just how my brain works. I will find out. It will be deleted. You will be blocked from the channel. Alright? Nobody has time for that right now. Just say. Okay. But if you want to debate on the facts and you are anti-vax, in good faith, with great civility, you're welcome to come in anytime. Alright? Okay. To the judge, this meeting's ruling. Gosh, what a name. What a name, folks. Let's go ahead and get reading it, shall we? When the person undertaking the activity has two purposes, or when different people participating in the same series of activities have different purposes, it may be very difficult to say into which category the activities fall. This is the technicality that they're talking about. I'm going to finish the paragraph and kind of fill you in a little bit in regards to what he's saying here. This difficulty is particularly likely to arise in activities undertaken by an academic clinician and or in a teaching hospital with a research department. These difficulties arose in this case. Dr. Wakefield's purpose was undoubtedly research, my emphasis. Professor Walker-Smith's may have lain anywhere on the spectrum. It was for the panel to determine where it did, but first it had to determine what his intention in fact was. In other words, when you're getting ready to discipline someone who has been found guilty of extreme medical misconduct, but you are unsure because it is not stated clearly in the black and white whether it is research or actual medical practice, There's two different types of schools of discipline in regards to whether it's clinical, whether it's just research, or whether it's a physical. They also have two different criteria when it comes to ethics for obvious reasons. Since it was not clarified beyond a shadow of a doubt, cannot be construed into anything else, even if they emphasize it and done everything short of spelling it out, it can still be played to one area or another. That is the technicality that got the Professor Walker Smith's license returned to him. It is not saying that what was originally ruled on, the information provided by the GMC, all of that is still in place. It is still severe medical misconduct. Dr. Walker Smith got out on a technicality. Dr. Smith alone, for his singular particular case. Dr. Andrew Wakefield was not exonerated by anyone. You can't be exonerated by a technicality. You could have a case dismissed, but that doesn't guarantee that you're not guilty either. Okay? I mean, the JRC is notorious for using legal loopholes to continue their horrific treatment of disabled kids at their school. Gotta be specific. Otherwise, this adds to the confusion. They are not justifying a single thing that came out of Dr. Wakefield's mouth, and nobody should. I don't blindly trust anyone. I always fact check. And yeah, context is key, and unlike the majority of the mass public, even though it will cost me time and make me late to everything, I'm going to look for the context. I don't take any words or headlines at face value. And if you looked around at the world, you really shouldn't be either. They're trying to make us so busy, so worried, and so busy that we don't notice what's going on around us. You got to start learning to understand when people are playing you. Because if you don't, they will run amok and take your money and inspire a million grifters to come along right after you to take what remains of their money. Just saying. Now let me go again. We'll read this next part here. The panel made no excuses finding on this issue and cannot have appreciated the need to do so. There was a good deal of evidence, to which I refer in greater detail below, that Professor Walker Smith and his team were undertaking what any reasonable body of medical practitioners would categorize as research, my emphasis, the writer's emphasis. But also that he intended and genuinely believed what he was doing was solely primarily for the clinical benefit of the children. In other words, he really was in it to try and help. What Wakefield was in it for, I'm sorry, anti-vaxxers, you can love them all you want to, but if you don't see the very obvious grift, then I very much suggest you go pull up that original GMC final decision that was done in 2010, because there is some very explicit detail in all the wrongdoings of Wakefield throughout the entirety of this clinical study. Particularly troubling is the taking the blood samples of children at a birthday party. You think those samples couldn't be absolutely contaminated and useless? You know how much is going on during a kid's birthday party? How many things are in the air? Things get knocked over. I mean, the list is kind of endless here. When such an issue arises, a panel will most always have to determine the honesty or otherwise of the practitioner. Justice Smitting's ruling found that British General Medical Council, in not making a finding of honesty, goes to the facts of the case. Quite simply, a legal decision needs to state, for the accused and others, why he is at fault. So, it becomes difficult to do that when you don't understand whether it is clear whether this is for research or whether this was a more physical type of clinical study. Because there's two separate bodies of discipline as well as criteria to follow for the ethics committee depending on if it's research or a more hands-on clinical study. And that's what they're talking about here. Because we don't know which one it is, we can't say for sure which things these individuals violated. By not addressing this, the GMC did not explain why it was finding against Walker Smith. This made the decision appear arbitrary. In fact, according to Brian Deere, let me go below here. The Court of Appeals had recently handed down a judgment that said that the old GMC approach of single-line findings in disciplinary cases was no longer acceptable, and that in complex cases, panels need to set out their reasoning in detail. Exactly. Now, that being said, what they're talking about is, in legal jargon, when the GMC made the decision it did, they're saying it wasn't enough to simply go through line by line all of the violations that Dr. Andrew Wakefield made. What they're saying is that the judges didn't explain why they felt that those were violations. Maybe they felt like we need more evidence. Doesn't really say here. But essentially, you didn't explain yourself well enough, is what they're trying to say. I happen to categorically and completely disagree. I don't think the details in regards to explaining their decision was missing at all. Quite the opposite. I felt like they were very explicit. But that was the whole reason behind the decision. They weren't saying that what the GMC said in regards to the things that Dr. Wakefield pulled, they're not saying that those things didn't happen. Okay? They're saying that the people who made the decision did not show enough reasoning in regards to why they made that decision. That change occurred during the interval between the findings of fact stage and the sanction stage, Deere 2014. Deere's comment goes on to state, but the other thing exposed was the shocking anomaly of Section 35A of the Medical Act of 1983. This allows the GMC to requisition documents from any party, but not the doctors facing charges. Thus, unlike in civil or criminal trials, the defendant does not have to supply a statement of case or give any response at all to the allegations. Thus, Walker Smith and Wakefield gave no response to the charges until after the prosecution had closed its case. His lawyers were literally circulating documents cold during the hearing. It's a disgraceful loophole, which in this case caused huge time and cost overruns and ultimately allowed Walker Smith the chance to appeal. It's a fundamental principle of a fair trial that neither side can ambush the other, but not when the doctors are involved. In other words, the GMC should have known of the Court of Appeals ruling, of the necessity to document their reasoning in detail. But at the same time, Section 35A's not allowing the requisition of documents from doctors gave Walker Smith the chance to appeal. So in other words, they're feeling like Brian Deere's saying they should have allowed that requisition of the documents. One could consider this a procedural error. That is, that the GMC did not discuss nor justify why their decision gave greater weight to the evidence that Walker Smith's intentions were based on research rather than best clinical interest of his patients. However, the judgment also made clear that Dr. Wakefield's purpose was undoubtedly research. There is no challenge to the panel's finding that Dr. Wakefield's purpose was research. My emphasis. Keeping in mind that part of the evidence against Wakefield was that he was carrying out research on children prior to receiving approval to do so. That is my major problem. His intention may be research, but he was assigning painful procedures like lumbar punctures on very young children. He does not have any pediatrician credentials. He is not supposed to be setting up those types of clinical procedures within a research project because he does not have the credentials to be able to do so. So you can't just say it's strictly research. There are some things going on during that study that were physical, that caused those kids a large amount of pain, that were not carried out properly. Is there any particular reason we're not going to be talking about that? Keep in mind that part of the evidence against Wakefield was that he was carrying out research on children prior to receiving approval to do so. Thank you. Note that some of the anti-vaccinists argue that Wakefield's motives included wanting to help the children. I do not dispute this. I do. I would like to dispute that. I volunteer. I volunteer. Grifters like Wakefield only want to help themselves. The way that I know he's a grifter is he has done nothing but continue to grift. You can be an idealist and be very wrong, but still be very genuine in your belief. Right? But yeah, Dr. Wakefield, on the other hand, does out of his way to not just get money from grifting for himself from the anti-vax mob he's helped recreate, but he's also opened the door for millions upon millions of snake oil salesmen selling cures both benign and absolutely horrific to desperate parents with autistic kids. And all circles back to here, folks. All circles back to here. And I'm going to show you exactly how it does. And we'll continue to go on here. But let me go back to where we left off. But Wakefield's position at Royal Free was as a researcher. People often have multiple motives for their actions. However, sometimes I lose my place, folks, not of equal weight. Justice Mitting's ruling found, given the evidence, see below, that Wakefield's main purpose was research. As a researcher, he was, throughout, principally interested in the testing his hypothesis. This is a typical logical flaw demonstrated by most, if not all, anti-vaccinalists. That is, to see things in black and white. For them, if Wakefield's motives included wanting to help the children, then his other actions are irrelevant. This is the whole the ends justifies the means bullshit that the JRC continues to use to continue their insanity as well. I see it constantly and all the time. You can say that, but I'm here to help the children. Oh, and everything should be permissible to help them, right? Including unnecessary lumbar punctures that you had no credentials whatsoever to set up and schedule for those kids? How can you sit there and say you want to help kids while taking blood samples in one of the most unsanitary places on planet Earth? Literally anything at a child's birthday party could contaminate those samples and make them utterly useless. What in the name of God was he thinking, conducting, getting blood drawn in a place where the sanitation is not in a controlled area? That's where you draw blood. That's where you do testing. You don't do it at a child's birthday party. But I'm supposed to believe he wants to help children? He is a doctor, a research doctor at that. If anybody should know and understand just how easy it is to be able to contaminate a blood sample by getting it done at a birthday party, he should be it. How can we even trust his findings if you are a true blue anti-vaccinist? When you know that some of his samples came from a birthday party where anything could have happened to contaminate those samples. We don't know. Why is that okay? That should have null and voided the whole study right there. Right there. I mean, I'm sorry, parents, anti-vaccinists, and JRC Kool-Aid drinking parents, both of y'all. All of y'all. Let me go full Missouri here. All y'all. Alright? In the name of God, what is wrong with you all? You really think that it is okay for children to suffer? Children to be put through experimental testing? In some cases, excusing literal child abuse. But it's helping. It's in the name of medicine. That makes it permissible, right? No, it doesn't, Karen. That's why medical malpractice lawsuits exist. There's a whole part of criminal law that literally exists to take care of cases like this. When there is medical malpractice going on. When a doctor is, well, doing crap like Wakefield. Right? The ends do not justify the means. And how you continue to tote his study when those birthday samples, more than likely, I can't say 100%, I'm not clairvoyant, I'm not omnipresent, I am not God. But with the massive chance that those blood samples taken from that party could be contaminated, did he actually still use the blood samples anyway? I'd be interested in finding that out, wouldn't you? I mean, all right, let me go ahead and continue to read here. As for the link between MMR vaccine and autism, response to a letter from Wakefield on February the 20th, 1997, in which Wakefield discussed his acting as a consultant in pending legal actions on the behalf of autistic children. Meeting includes Walker Smith responded, "My position, as with measles, MMR, and Crohn's disease, is that the link with MMR is so far unproven. It is clear that the legal involvement by nearly all the parents will have an effect on the study as they have a vested interest." Thank you. Conflict of interest exists, people. I myself simply will not appear in court on this issue. The judgment further states, oh, good, we're almost done. At a press conference which Professor Walker Smith did not attend, convened to accompany publication, Dr. Wakefield stated publicly the view which he had previously expressed privately to Professor Walker Smith, that he could no longer support the giving of the MMR vaccine. This man is insane. Please never let him and RFK Jr. meet. For the love of God and all that's holy. The joint view of Professor Walker-Smith and Dr. Murch, stated in a letter to Dr. Wakefield on the 21st of January 1998, was that it was inappropriate to emphasize the role of MMR vaccine in publicity about the paper, and that they supported the government policy concerning MMR until more firm evidence was available for them to see for themselves. A logical conclusion, and I would also put aside the fact that I would like to see that replicated by completely separate objective research centers. They published a press release to coincide with the publication, stating their support for the present public health policy concerning MMR. Dr. Wakefield's statement and subsequent publicity had a predictable adverse effect upon take-up of the MMR vaccine, of great concern to those responsible for public health. And as of right now, folks, it's only getting worse. More kids are falling sick from illnesses that I had the privilege of never catching because I was properly vaccinated. Dr. Wakefield's statement and subsequent publicity had a predictable adverse effect. There is now no respectable body of opinion which supports his hypothesis. Boom. And the MMR vaccine, autism, and colitis are causally linked. My emphasis. Want to know why I think a lot of autistics have stomach problems? Just based on personal observation and my extreme issues with acid reflux. It's because we are constantly beset with anxiety. We live in a world every day that is not built for us. That alone in and of itself could cause anyone to have anxiety issues. Now, add on to that having the natural social graces of a goldfish. I am referring to myself, of course. Okay? Just saying. We all know that anxiety is very strongly linked to a lot of different stomach issues, especially with acute gastritis or acid reflux. A lot of us are dual diagnosers. And there is a special kind of anxiety that's almost, it seems to me, in my observation, to be unique to autistic folks. Because we're also paranoid on top of it. A good chunk of us have experienced trauma at some point in our lives. Right? That's bound to cause some health issues. That is bound to cause stomach issues. An after effect, if you will. Do they affect one another? Of course they do. Does that mean that they are somehow linked together other than the fact that they are both residing within the body of the same human being? No. At least that's my hypothesis anyway, particularly since my acid reflux always gets worse if I've had like a major anxiety fit and I'm to the point where I'm just like literally catatonic on the couch. Stuck in my own ninth circle, personal circle of Dante's hell. Let me go ahead and continue here. We'll get this finished up. Finally, John Walker Smith, along with 9 of the original 13 authors of Wakefield's 1998 article, published a 2004 retraction that stated, "We wish to make it clear that in this paper no causal link was established between MMR vaccine and autism, as the data were insufficient. However, the possibility of such a link was raised, and consequent events have had major implications for public health. In view of this, we consider now is the appropriate time that we should together formally retract the interpretation placed upon these findings in the paper, Murch 2004, page 750. I think it quite clear that the High Court's judgment found no credibility to the hypothesis that MMR vaccine and autism and colitis were causally linked, nor that the legal technicality that allowed Walker Smith to regain his medical license in any way applied to Wakefield. In addition, Walker Smith has separated himself from the claims of a link between the MMR vaccine and autism enterocolitis. All right, so that really does make it pretty quite clear, folks. And because I'm kind of stuck in autistic brain fog haze at the moment, we're going to go ahead and close out before I take you all into left field and things get really nuts. We don't get very many views on this channel, and the few we do tend to get removed from time to time. Please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe. Please don't forget to hit the comments and double check and make sure that you are still set up to receive notifications. Because RFK can't stop being a moron for 5 minutes, there's probably going to be a new series that is going to pop up on his recent insanity. And well, we're going to be continuing on with this series down the rabbit hole. Tomorrow we'll be continuing on with the Medicaid. Of course, on Sunday we're going to be going back to advanced directives, and I certainly don't want you to miss anything. So please go ahead and double check that. I appreciate your time, and as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everyone.